The Roman Empire. Once the beacon of civilization, its reach extended across continents, its wealth unmatched, its power seemingly eternal. But in the end, it crumbled. What caused the fall of this mighty empire, and what lessons can we draw from it for our modern world? Rome wasn't built in a day, and neither was its greatness. In the early days of the Roman Republic, fairness and collaboration were central to its success. Power was distributed across institutions: the Senate, the consuls, and the assemblies. This balance of power allowed for a system where different voices, patrician and plebeians, could be heard. Take the story of the 12 tables. Around 450 BCE, plebeians, the working class majority, demanded more transparency in laws, which were often manipulated by the elite. In response, Rome etched its first legal code into stone, ensuring that justice was clear and accessible to all. This wasn't just a legal victory, it was a societal milestone that built trust and unity. Rome's infrastructure reflected this balance. Roads and aqueducts didn't just connect cities, they connected people, fostering trade, communication, and a sense of shared purpose. Early Roman society thrived on collaboration, fairness, and inclusivity. But over time, cracks began to form. As Rome grew wealthier, that wealth became concentrated in fewer hands. Large estates, or latifundia, replaced small farms, forcing countless families into poverty. It was like a rich banquet where the elite feasted at the table while the majority survived on scraps from the floor. One example of this shift is the story of Tiberius Gracchus. In 133 BCE, Tiberius, a Roman tribune, proposed land reforms to redistribute property back to poor farmers. His efforts were met with fierce resistance from the wealthy elite, who saw their privilege threatened. The result? Tiberius was murdered, a chilling symbol of how far Rome has strayed from its ideals of fairness. As inequality grew, so did unrest. The government turned to distractions, bread and circuses. Free grain and grand spectacles kept masses entertained, but these were temporary fixes. Like a ship with a rotting hull, Rome's society looked grand on the surface, but was slowly sinking from within. Rome's political system, once a model of checks and balances, became a breeding ground for corruption. Senators and officials increasingly used their positions for personal gain. Trust eroded, and with it, the cohesion that had held Rome together. When too much power and wealth accumulated at the top, even those at the top become vulnerable. It's like a wagon overloaded on one side. It may stand for a while, but eventually it will tip over, bringing down everyone with it. The centralization of power was another key issue. The Republic gave way to the Empire, where decisions rested on the shoulders of a single emperor. Some, like Augustus, ruled wisely, but others, like Nero, used their power irresponsibly, draining resources and destabilizing the empire. The once resilient system became fragile, dependent on the whims of individuals rather than the strength of institutions. Rome's expansion was both its greatest achievement and its undoing. At its height, the empire stretched from Britain to North Africa, from Spain to the Middle East. Managing such vast territory required immense resources, which became harder to sustain as corruption and inefficiency spread. One famous story illustrates this strain. In 9 CE, Rome suffered a devastating defeat in the Teutoburg forest, where Germanic tribes ambushed and annihilated 3 Roman legions. This loss marked the end of Rome's expansion into Germany and revealed the limits of its centralized control. Provinces far from Rome felt neglected, and loyalty to the empire weakened. In 410 CE, the unthinkable happened. Rome was sacked by the Visigoths, a moment that symbolized the empire's fall from grace. Initially, the elite in Rome felt insulated from the threat, believing the Visigoths would only target poorer, less defended provinces. But their neglect of these regions allowed the situation to escalate. The Visigoths gained strength, momentum, and eventually turned their sights on Rome itself, toppling the very elite who thought they were untouchable. The story of Rome is a warning for us today. The concentration of wealth, political corruption, and over-centralization of power are issues we face in modern society. Our housing systems mirror these problems. Centralized ownership, speculative markets, and short-term profit focus have made housing unaffordable for millions. When a system prioritizes the few over the many, it becomes unstable. And when the foundation of society crumbles, even those at the top are at risk of losing everything. History shows us that a more equitable system isn't just good for the poor, it's essential for everyone's survival. But there's hope. Decentralized living can transform how we live. Imagine housing that isn't controlled by landlords or institutions, but managed collaboratively by those who live there. Decentralized living is about creating communities where resources are shared transparently and everyone has a stake in the future. ColivingDAO is pioneering a new way of life, building fairer, more resilient communities that reject the flaws of centralized systems. Decentralized living empowers people to share resources, collaborate transparently, and build homes where everyone has a stake in the future. This isn't just about fixing housing, it's about rethinking how we live together as a society. Rome fell because it couldn't adapt. Today, we have the tools and the knowledge to create something better. You can play an active role in this paradigm shift. Visit ColivingDAO.com and help build the future of decentralized, equitable living. The future isn't something to wait for, it's something we create together.